Hey folks, if you're wanting to make the Sophie scarf but a little bit different, you've come to the right place because I am going to show you the technique for doing a stripy version, a version with a border, and a version with stripes in the middle and a border on the edge. So this is kind of like a yarn management system because the beauty of doing the Sophie scarf is it's a super fun pattern, which I love, but it's also got the I-cord running down the edge, which can be really, really handy when you're doing stripes or color changes because it's a way of hiding those floats away in the I-cord so you don't even see them. So I'm going to show you the specific techniques for doing those three things. It's not going to be a tutorial for how to make the Sophie scarf though, because obviously that is a pattern by Petite Knit. You can buy the pattern over on the Petite Knit website, and what I recommend if you're not familiar with how to make the Sophie scarf is click on the tab for videos, and she's done a bunch of videos for the different techniques in the scarf. So starting it off, how to do the I-cord, how to do the increases and decreases, and how to bind off and finish your work. So yes, go there, get your pattern, have a look at those tutorials if you need to figure out how to make the scarf, but then come back here and I will show you the techniques for doing your yarn changes and your color changes to make some fun patterns in your scarf. So I'll show you all three in the order I think they're the easiest. If you're wanting to jump forward to one of the other scarves, so I'll put the timestamps up on the screen. So we're going to do the stripy one first, which is super easy, and that will be at this time. Then I'll do the border version, and that will be at this time. And then I'll do the stripes plus a border at this time. Also, one thing to note is when I'm making the Sophie scarf, I like to do my increases and decreases on odd number rows, which I think is different to the pattern. But it won't affect any of the techniques I show you. It's just if things look a little bit different to how you're doing it, that might be the reason why. And I just like to do that because I find it helpful for counting the rows to do it on odd numbers. I don't know, just makes sense in my brain. Also, I've done some cozy knitting vlogs for doing my plain Sophie scarves, the Sophie hood, and the stripy Sophie shawl. So if you want to watch any videos while you're doing some knitting, you can put those on. Also, in those ones, I time how long it takes to do each of the projects. So if you're interested in knowing maybe how long it might take you to do some of them, that is in there too. Anyway, on with the show. So the first one I'm going to show you is the standard stripes. And for this one, I did a size large. I used 4.5mm needles because I wanted it to be a little bit looser and drapier. It ended up being 102 centimeters long and 54 grams in weight. I used Morris & Sons Empire yarn, which is an 8-ply super fine merino. It's so lovely and soft. I used it for all the projects. I'll put the specifics up on the screen of this particular yarn so you can see if it's similar to yours. But yeah, I used 54 grams all up, so 27 in each color for this one. If you wanted to, you could choose to do this scarf in multiple different colors. You would just want to make sure that in the section where I'm showing you how to carry the yarn up through the I-cord, you do that for all the different yarns you're not using in the row you're knitting. It will make sense, but yeah, just remember, if you're doing multiple colors, you'll need to carry multiple yarns up through your I-cord. The other thing to note is doing stripes in a garter stitch scarf will end up with your scarf being different on both sides. If this is not something that appeals to you, if you don't like the look of garter stitch in stripes, because it is kind of different, you might be more interested in doing the border version because then you wouldn't have any stripes sort of making things look different. I personally love the look of it being different on both sides. I think it adds a fun sort of element of texture when you're tying it up and you can see both sort of different versions of the stripe. For my scarf, I was doing rows of 4 for each color. So forwards, and then back. You would want to do rows in even amounts. So like 2, 4, 6, so on and so forth, because then you're always doing your color changes on the one side of the scarf and you're always carrying your yarn up through the I-cord on one side of the scarf. If you wanted to do rows in an odd number for each color, you'd need to have 2 balls of each color yarn because you'd be changing on different sides of the scarf every second time. So just a little bit more yarn management, but you could definitely do that if you wanted to. Alrighty, let's get on with the scarf. So for my scarf, I'm going to start it off with the blue color and I'm going to do a long tail cast on. I like to use the long tail because then I've got a tail end on the starting side or the right side whenever I'm about to do an odd number row. I like to do this because it helps me keep count and realize anytime I see that long tail at the start of a row, I'm about to do an odd number row. And then I'm going to knit the first 4 rows exactly as it's written in the pattern. Alrighty, so I've done 4 rows and you'll see here my tail is on the right hand side, meaning I'm about to start an odd number row. So I'm going to start row 5 with my purple yarn. To do this, I'm just going to take my purple yarn, fold it in half with about a 10 to 15 centimeter tail and knit the first stitch. Then I'm just going to let that tail fall and continue knitting the pattern as it's written. The first row of a colour change will look a little bit weird because your first 3 stitches will be in the new colour, and then the last 3, because you're slipping the stitches of the I-cord, will be in the previous row's colour. Don't worry about that, it will sort itself out after the next row. So there's 2 main techniques you need to know how to do for doing stripes in your scarf, but it's going to be so much easier for me to show you this when the scarf's a little bit wider. So I'm going to keep knitting and then I'll show you how to do the colour changes. Alrighty, so I've done a bunch of knitting on my Sophie scarf and it's wider now, so I can easily show you the techniques to do the colour changing stripes and to make sure you're carrying the non-working yarn up through the I-cord edging so you don't see it. For my pattern, I'm doing 4 rows in each colour, so I'm going forwards and back, and then I'm changing to the next colour, forwards, and back. Alrighty, so there's 2 main techniques you need to know how to do for this scarf. The first one is when you're doing a new row in a different colour than what was in the previous row. So for my next row, I'm actually going to be using purple, so I'll show you that technique first. But then the other technique is for when you're doing the next row the same colour as the previous row, because that's when you're going to want to deal with catching your float of the non-working yarn so it goes up through the I-cord edge. So now I'm going to show you the first technique, which is for when we're doing a new row in a different colour than the previous row. Alrighty, so for this row we're going to start using the purple, and I like to flip the work back so I can see what's happening with my yarns. So because we're working with purple, we want this to be over on the right hand side of our station. The blue, which we're not using this row, we'll put over to the left. And you'll see here the purple is heading off in the right direction and the blue is sort of laying towards the left. And nothing is crossing over between these 2 yarns at the back. You can see a little gap between them. This is perfect. So then just turn your work back, pick up the purple yarn that we're going to start this row with, and then just start knitting with that as per the pattern. I'll knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord, and then I'll keep working in the purple all the way to the end of this row. And then I'm going to put my yarn to the front and slip those last 3 stitches onto the needle. And what you'll notice here is that I have got mostly a row of purple stitches, but then these last 3 here of the I-cord edge are in the blue. So then I'm just going to turn my needle around clockwise so I can work on the next row. We'll be working with this purple again, all the way to the end. And you'll notice when I knit these 3 first I-cord stitches, it's now changing from blue to purple. So that's kind of how the pattern for the I-cord works out. It might be a little confusing the first time you see the last 3 stitches being a different colour than the row, but I swear it all works out in the end. So I'm just going to continue working all the way to the end of this row. And then I'm going to put my yarn to the front and slip those last 3 stitches onto my needle. And here you can see the blue yarn from the previous row just sitting to the right of those I-cord stitches. So then I'll turn my work back around counterclockwise so all my threads are in a neat position. And then I'm going to knit the next row, but I need to deal with catching the float of my blue yarn so it's hidden up in the I-cord edge and we won't see it. So to do this, we need to trap this yarn within the I-cord edge, and we do that by twisting our yarns before this row. So here we've got our purple yarn, and I'm just going to duck underneath that one, and I'm going to grab this blue yarn, and then I'm going to put it back over to the left-hand position, but now you'll notice that the blue yarn is sitting on top of the purple yarn when I cross them over. This is how the yarns twist together, and this is what's going to catch it up into the I-cord edge, because when we knit with that purple yarn, it's going to sort of push that blue yarn up and away into the I-cord. So now that our purple yarn is crossing underneath the blue yarn, we can just pick up the purple yarn and then we can just knit to the end of the row. And then I'm going to bring my yarn to the front, slip those last 3 stitches onto the needle, and then I can turn my work clockwise and then knit back in the other direction using my purple yarn. And then at the end of this row, I'll bring my yarn to the front and slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle. And here we are at the end of the row, and you can see how our non-working yarn has been caught under this little crossover section here. It's what keeps it tucked away so you don't see it. Then I'm going to turn my work back and we're going to do our next row. So because I'm doing 4 rows in each colour, I'm actually going to change colours for this row. But if you wanted to keep doing rows in the same colour and have bigger blocks of colour, all you need to do is make sure you catch your yarn every time you're doing a row that's the same colour as the previous row's colour. So if I wanted to keep using purple, I would duck under here, grab the blue, and then put it so that the purple was crossing underneath the blue yarn at the back, and then I would just knit with my purple. But because I'm changing colours, I actually want my blue to be over on the right hand side and my purple to be on the left. And you'll notice that there's no crossing over between these colours at the back. Then you'll work the next 4 rows just how we did the previous 4 in the purple. And that's the entire repeat pattern for this scarf. Just keep repeating those techniques all the way to the end. Alrighty, I'm towards the end of the scarf now and I've got 7 stitches on my needle. I'm going to do a decrease in this row, so when I change to the purple, I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches, then I'm going to do a decrease on the 3rd. I'm just going to knit 2 together, but you could do a slip knit passover. And then I'm going to bring my yarn forward and slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle. Then I can just turn my work around, and now that there's only 6 stitches on the needle, I can just continue working as per the pattern. And then I'm going to bind this one off just like in the pattern, and I'll weave in all my ends of the blue yarn and the purple yarn as well. Because the blue yarn has already been knotted at the end and the start when we sort of cast on and bound off, that's fine. But if you wanted to, when you were weaving in the ends of your purple yarn, you could also do a little knot where it ends up, just to add that extra layer of security. If you think it's going to be a scarf you're going to be washing and wearing a lot, you might just want to do a little knot to make it extra sure it's not going to come undone. And then I like to just weave my ends up through the I-cord. I'll go up a bit and then back down, and then I'll just trim off the yarn, and then it's all done. And that's the end of the stripy scarf done. I think this one turned out really well. I love the colours. I love how it's matching at both ends. I just think it's super cute. And that means it's time to move on to the next technique we've got for how to mod your Sophie scarf. Okay, so for the border version of the scarf, I will show you the techniques. I actually did this one in a small size. Again, I was using the Morris & Sons Empire. But for this one, I did it in 4mm needles, and it ended up being 82 centimeters long. So it ended up weighing 43 grams all up. So in the end, I used 33 grams of the dark purple in the middle and 10 of the light purple that I've used on the sides. And to do this light purple, I actually needed to separate my light purple yarn into 2 balls, because I would have one running up one side of the scarf while the other is knit on the other side of the scarf. And I think that's about all I have to say about this one. Let's jump into it. I'm going to start with the long tail cast on, just like in the pattern. Just like before, you'll notice that the tail is on the right hand side whenever I'm about to start a row which is odd numbered. So the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, etc. rows. This is just a handy thing I like to keep a note of, just because it helps me count my rows. And now I'm just going to knit as per the pattern until I get up to the section where I need to make my first increase. So I've done a bunch of rows. My yarn tail's on the right hand side, meaning we're up to an odd number row, and this is where I want to start doing my increases to add in my dark purple in the middle. So this little ball of yarn here is going to be for the right hand side of the I-cord, whereas the left side of the I-cord is going to be done with this ball of yarn here. And then I'm going to add in my dark purple yarn with the increase I'm going to do in this row. So I'm going to knit the pattern as per normal. I'm going to do the first 2 stitches. And on the 3rd stitch here, I'm going to do my increase. So you would ordinarily do this by knitting through the front loop. And then before you take it off the needle, you would swing your needle around and then knit through the back loop as well in the same colour. But because we're adding in our new colour, I'm actually going to bring in my purple yarn here. I'm just going to make a little fold in the yarn and have a tail maybe 10-15 centimetres long. And I'm just going to hook that over my needle and then make my stitch with that. And then I can just drop that tail end, we'll secure that in later. And then I'll bring my yarn to the front just like in the pattern. Then I'll slip the next 3 stitches onto my needle. So you can see here now we've got 7 stitches on the needle, and it was that increase that added in that dark purple in the middle. I'm just going to turn my work around, and you can see the 2 yarn ends down here, we'll just keep them aside. This ball of yarn here is for the I-cord we did before, but now we need to do the other I-cord side, so I need to incorporate the other ball of purple yarn that we have. So now I'm going to incorporate the new light purple ball of yarn. I'll put my needle in as if to make a stitch, and then I'm just going to take this yarn here, and just like with the dark purple before, I'm just going to fold it over. Then I'm going to loop it over my needle and make this first stitch. Then I'll just drop the yarn tail end and knit the other stitches with my yarn. Now, because we're doing our I-cord and the middle section of our scarf in different colours, we need to think about how we're going to connect these pieces together so we don't have gaps in between. So now I want to start knitting with this dark purple to knit this 1 stitch in the middle, but I need to connect it to the light purple over this side for the I-cord. So to do that, I want this dark purple to be sitting underneath the light purple when you look at them at the back. So you sort of cross the yarns over, and you definitely want the dark purple one to be sitting underneath the light purple one. This is what's going to connect these sections together to make sure there's no gaps in between your I-cord and the main body. So then just knit that 1 stitch and then bring the yarn forward just like in the pattern and slip the next 3 stitches onto your needle. And that's the end of our even row, and if we turn our work back counterclockwise, we can begin our odd row. Our dark purple's in the middle, the purple to the left is for the left side of our I-cord that we were just using. The purple to the right is for the right side of the I-cord, and we're about to use that again now. So now I'm going to knit with this right hand side ball, and I'm going to knit the first 3 stitches. And then, just like we did before, we're going to move to using our dark purple to knit that middle stitch. But again, we want to make sure it's connecting to this side of our I-cord. So we want this dark purple to be sitting underneath the light purple when we're doing our stitches. So I'm just going to take this light purple ball and put it over the top of the dark purple ball and shift their positions around. Now we can see our dark purple is sitting underneath the light purple when it's crossed over. And now I can just knit this middle stitch with the dark purple, and you can see how it's connecting in that light purple strand. You can just sort of pull it down and out of the way while you're knitting. Then I'll bring my yarn to the front and slip the next 3 stitches onto the needle, just like in the pattern. Then I'm just going to turn my needles around clockwise so I don't mess my yarn placement up. And then I'll start working on the next even row. But first I need to move some of my yarns around on my table. So first of all, I like to take this big ball of dark purple, so our middle colour, and put it on the very left over the top of the other yarns. And then I move the other yarns 1 place along. So this yarn here is what I'm going to be using for the I-cord on this row. You can see in the previous row here how it's connected to the dark purple yarn because of the way we cross the yarns over. So now with this yarn, I'm just going to knit the first 3 stitches. And then to make sure our dark purple is going to be linked to the light purple again, we're going to want to cross our yarns over. To do this, I grab this little ball and cross it over the top of the dark purple, and I move the dark purple into the middle space. Then I can just pick up the dark purple because it's now sitting underneath the light purple. I can just tuck that light purple yarn out of the way and knit that middle stitch. Then I'll put the yarn to the front and slip the next 3 stitches. Then I can turn my work back counterclockwise and I'm ready to start my next odd row. So again, I'm going to pick up this yarn on the right. You can see here how it's connected to the purple yarn from the previous row. And I'm going to knit my first 3 stitches with this. And then I'll take this yarn ball, I'll put it over the top of the dark purple and move the dark purple to the right position. Then I'll just knit this middle stitch with my dark purple. Yarn to the front and slip the next 3 stitches. Then I'm going to move my dark purple yarn over to the left hand position, move the other yarns around 1 space. Then I'll turn my work around clockwise and I'll pick up this middle ball to knit the I-cord on this side. Knit the first 3 stitches. Then I'm going to take this small ball of light purple yarn, cross it over the top of the dark purple and move the dark purple to the middle position. Then I'll just pick this up, knit that middle stitch, bring the yarn to the front and slip the next 3 stitches. Then I'll just turn my work back and I'll turn it counterclockwise so my yarns don't get tangled. Hopefully this pattern's making sense how I'm doing it. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you get the hang of it, it becomes very second nature as you're working. Keep working in this technique using the pattern and I'll come back for the next increase. Alright, so now we're up to an odd number row, which you'll remember from the intro is where I do my increases. So we're going to increase on this row. Now ordinarily you increase on the 3rd stitch, but because we're doing our I-cord in a different colour to the main body of the scarf, we can't increase on our 3rd stitch. So instead I'm going to knit this 3rd stitch of the I-cord just like normal, and then I'll always do my increases on the 4th stitch because that will be in the dark purple. So here I'll take my light purple, I'll put it over the top of my dark purple, move their positions so the dark purple is crossing underneath the light purple. Then I'm going to make an increase. I'll go through the front of the stitch, but before I take it off the needle, I'll put my needle back through the back loop of the stitch and I'll also make a stitch there, and then I'll take that off the needle. Now you can see I've got 2 stitches of the dark purple where previously there was just 1. I'll bring my yarn in front and slip the next 3 stitches. And you'll notice we have 8 stitches on our needle now. So I'll just turn my work around and I'll move my dark purple over to the left. I'll move the other ones along. Then I'll pick up this middle ball and I'll knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord. I'll put this ball over the top of the dark purple. Then I'll knit the next 2 dark purple stitches with my dark purple yarn. Then I can just bring my yarn in front and slip the next 3 stitches. Then I'll just turn my work back around and we're ready for another odd number row. And you can see here how our work is starting to grow with that dark purple starting to fill out the middle section when I make my increases. At this stage of your work, because the scarf is so skinny, it can be a little bit confusing as to which ball you're using, so I really do recommend using a tabletop or something like this where you can keep your yarn balls, especially of the 2 light purple yarns, quite separate so you know exactly which one you're using for which side of the I-cord. You could even, if you wanted to, wrap each of the little yarn balls up and put a label on them, one for left and one for right. That way you're never getting confused between which side of the I-cord is to be knit with which yarn ball. Obviously when your work becomes a lot wider, it's really easy to tell the difference between which side of the I-cord is to be knit with which ball of yarn, but at this start bit it can be a little bit confusing. And because at the start we attached our new dark purple with an increase, you can see a slight thread here of the different colours. When you're weaving in your ends at the end of the scarf, you can hide this pretty well, but if you don't like this method, in the next scarf, I have a different method for attaching yarn that ends up looking a little bit different. Alrighty, so here I've done a bunch of work on this scarf. You can see I've made it past the halfway mark and I'm working on my decreases now. I've got my yarn balls still in the correct positions they need to be in, and I'm just going to do a couple more rows just to make sure the pattern of crossing over the yarns is making complete sense to you. I'm going to get the light purple from the right to start knitting my I-cord. You can see here how it's connected with the dark purple at the back, and there's no gaps between the I-cord and the main body sections. Then I'll knit the first 3 stitches. And then I'm going to want to connect this section to the main body section, so I need to cross my yarns over. So I'll take this light purple yarn, put it over the top of the dark purple, pick up the dark purple yarn. You can see that the dark purple is crossing underneath the light purple. And then I'll just knit the body section of the scarf with this dark purple yarn. And remember, if this is a row where you're wanting to do an increase or a decrease, you do it on the first stitch of the dark purple section. And then when I get to the end of the section of dark purple knitting, I'll bring my yarn to the front and slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle. Then I'm going to turn my work around clockwise. And I'm going to move my dark purple yarn over to the left hand side, and I'll move my other yarns around 1 space. So now I'm going to knit with the middle ball of yarn to do the I-cord on this side of the scarf. I'll knit the first 3 stitches, and then I'll take this yarn, put it over the top of my dark purple, put the dark purple in the middle. Again, you can see it's crossing underneath the light purple. Then I'll just knit to the end of this section in dark purple. Then I'll bring the yarn to the front and slip the next 3 stitches onto my needle. Then I'll turn my work back counterclockwise, and I'm ready for another odd row. And that's the technique again. Hopefully the pattern for switching the yarns is clear. In the next section, I'll show you how to cast off. So here I'm at the end of my scarf, and you'll see I've got 7 stitches on my needle, including 1 dark purple stitch right in the middle. So this is a row where I'm going to do a decrease. So I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches of my I-cord in the purple. Then I need to decrease here. So I'm actually going to do a slip of that next 3rd stitch. Then I'm going to knit the 4th stitch with my light purple yarn, and then I'm going to take the slipped stitch, the 3rd one, and put it back over the top of the 4th stitch. So this is a slip knit pass over decrease, and I think it's the neatest way to do it when you're working with these 2 colours for the I-cord and the body of the scarf. And then I'm just going to bring my yarn forward and slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle. So the I-cord for the rest of the scarf, I'm just going to use this ball of purple yarn that we started this row with. You could use this ball as well and just do 1/2 of the I-cord with that and 1/2 with the ball we were using. You would only really need to do this if you were doing both sides of the I-cord in different colours. But because it's the same colour, we can just use this purple for the rest of the scarf. So I'll turn my work around, and then I'm just going to continue knitting the rows as per the pattern. And then I'll bind it off just like in the pattern too. And just a reminder, if you need any help with any of the techniques for the actual pattern, the videos on the Petite Knit website are really helpful for these little techniques. She's got a specific one for how to bind it off if you're not sure how to do that. And when I finish binding it off, I'll be left with the yarn that I was using for the I-cord for this last bit of the scarf. But I'll also have this little bit of yarn here for the I-cord that we stopped doing a few rows back. And on the back, I've got the dark purple yarn here, so I can just trim these off and then I will weave in my ends. If you want to, you could also tie a knot in the dark purple and the lighter purple of the other side of the I-cord, just to make them extra secure before you weave them in. And that is the end of this scarf. I think it looks super neat with the different colour for the I-cord and the middle of the scarf. But I kind of miss the stripes now, so let's move on to the third option for how to modify your Sophie scarf. And for the last scarf, I'm going to show you the version with stripes on the inside, but the I-cord is a solid colour. Again, because it's in garter stitch, the back is going to look different from the front in this one. So just be prepared for that, but I like the look of it. For this one, I did a size small and I used my Morrison & Sons Empire 8-ply or DK weight yarn. I used 4mm needles and it ended up being 42 grams at the end. This one has the sort of most difficult kind of yarn management just because it's got the stripes and the border being different. But essentially you need your yarn to be in 3 balls. You need 1 ball of green for one side of the I-cord, and that's the ball you also do your stripes with. So this would need to be the bigger ball of green. This would be 21 grams for this scarf. Then you need a smaller ball of green just for the I-cord up one side. And for this I used 5 grams. And then for your other colour stripe in the middle, you need another ball. So for that one, I ended up using 16 grams of the blue. This one ended up being 82 centimetres long. And I think it looks super fun. One thing I probably would change with this one if I did it again is I would have the blue and the green be slightly more different in value. I feel like with a darker green, this one kind of would have like looked a little bit more nice. Like in this one, how the purple is so light against the blue, I just feel like it kind of looks a little bit better that way. So one thing to think about when you're picking your colours out is maybe don't make them too close in value. Alrighty, so I'll show you the technique for this one. Just remember you need to set up your balls at the start. And I think the easiest thing to keep in mind is the fact that 1 ball of green is a larger ball, which you do the I-cord and the stripes with, and you've got a small ball of green just for the I-cord on the one side. Let's get into it. Again, I'm going to start with a long tail cast on. And again, I'm going to mention that I love the fact that the tail is on the starting side of the odd number rows. And then I'm just going to knit as per the pattern for the first few rows. Alrighty, so I've done 4 rows of this scarf now. And you can see on this previous scarf, I also did 4 rows of each colour for this one. And I think that creates stripes of a really nice size. But because we're only going to put our stripes in the middle of the section of the scarf, not on the I-cord edges, we need to do a few more rows till we get to the section where we're going to do our first increase, because that's when we'll start to see the colour of the next stripe coming in just in that middle section of the scarf. So I'm going to knit a few more rows until we get up to the section where we're going to do our first increase. Okay, so on this next odd number row, which is when I like to do my increases, I'm going to do an increase and add in my blue yarn at the same time. I'm going to do this in a slightly different method than I did in the previous scarf, just to give you the option between the two. So I'll knit the first 3 stitches as per normal of our I-cord, and then I want to add in my blue for the next section. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little slip knot with my blue yarn, tighten this up, and then I'm just going to pop this onto my right needle after those first 3 I-cord stitches that I've already knit. I'll just tighten this up and then I'll just bring the yarn to the front. I'll let the tail of this yarn hang at the back. Then I'll slip the next 3 stitches, and you can see we've added in a new stitch now with our blue colour, so we've got 7 on the needle. So I'm just going to turn my needle clockwise and get ready to do the next row. So the big ball of green is for the stripes and the I-cord on the right side. The blue I'm just going to put in the middle. This other ball of blue I'll add in when I run out of the existing blue. And this is the green we're going to add in to do the other side of the I-cord. So I'm just going to move this blue over to the left-hand position. And with this small ball of green, I'm just going to grab it and add it in for my I-cord. I'm going to put my needle through the first stitch, make a little fold in the yarn with a tail of about 10 to 15 centimetres, and then I'm just going to knit with that stitch, and then I'll put my needle in, I'll drop the tail and then knit with the yarn for the second stitch, and then knit the third stitch of that I-cord. Now at this point I want to connect my I-cord to the main body of the scarf, so I need to make sure that my yarns are twisted. I want to put my green yarn over the top of this blue yarn that I'm going to use next. You can see here the blue yarn is sitting underneath the green yarn. This is perfect. So then I pick up the blue yarn and I'll knit the next stitch with the blue yarn. You can just tuck that green yarn under and out of the way to keep it neat. I'll knit that stitch and then I'm going to bring the yarn forward and slip the next 3 stitches onto the needle. So now all our yarn balls have been added and we can just move these yarn tails sort of down and out of the way if they're getting in your way or getting twisted with your other yarns. Then I'm just going to turn my work back counterclockwise and I'll be ready to knit the next odd row. I'm going to pick up my yarn from the right hand side, the green, which is the big ball of yarn. You can see here how nothing's crossed over or twisted at the back. And I'm just going to knit with this for the first 3 stitches of the I-cord. And now we need to do another row of this blue in the middle section, but we want to connect our I-cord to the blue section, so I need to twist my yarns again. To do this, I'll just grab this green ball of yarn, put it over the top of the blue, and put it in the middle. Then I'll move the blue to the side. You can see how it's sitting underneath the green here. I'll pick up the blue and knit the next stitch with that. And then I'll bring the yarn to the front and slip the next 3 stitches onto the needle. Then I'll turn my work around. I'll move this little blue ball over to the left-hand side and I'll move the other balls 1 space to the right. So this big green ball here is for this side, this little green ball is for this side, and the blue is for the middle section. So I'm going to pick up this little green ball of yarn, knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord on this side, then I'm going to take this little green ball of yarn and I'll put it over the top of our blue yarn and I'll move the blue into that center position. Then I'll knit this middle stitch with the blue yarn, keeping the green tucked down and out of the way. And then I'll bring my yarn to the front and slip those next 3 stitches. Then I'm going to turn my work back around. So now we're up to an odd row. It means it's time to do a colour change for our stripes in the middle section of the scarf. Each colour is for 4 rows, so that means we're going to always do our colour changes at the start of an odd row. So this green is for the I-cord on this side and for the stripes in the middle. And then our I-cord on this side is going to be knit with our small ball of green over to the left of our table. And then in the middle, every 4 rows, we're going to do a set of 4 blue rows. So with the big ball of green yarn, I'm just going to knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord. And because we're doing a stripe colour of a different colour than in the previous row, we're switching from the blue stripes to the green, I don't need to do anything with this blue thread yet to trap the yarn in the I-cord. I'll do that in the next few rows. So I'm just going to knit straight over the top of the blue stitch. I'll bring my yarn to the front and slip those last 3 stitches onto my needle. Then I'm going to turn my work around. I'll turn it clockwise. And you can see the blue thread is just hanging down the back here. Then I'm going to take this big ball of green yarn and I'm going to put it in the left-hand position, and I'm going to move the other 2 balls around 1 space to the right. Now I'm going to pick up this little ball of green yarn because this is what I'm going to use to do the I-cord on this side of the scarf, even when I'm doing green stripe rows. So I'm going to knit with this the first 3 stitches, which is the I-cord edge. But then I'm going to switch back to the big ball of green yarn for doing the stripe and the I-cord on the other side. So I need to connect this yarn to this yarn so we don't have a gap between the I-cord and the main body of the scarf. So I'm going to take this ball of green yarn, the small ball, and place it over the top of the bigger ball and move the bigger ball into the middle position. And you can see here the bigger ball of yarn has its yarn sitting underneath the smaller ball of yarn. And then I'm just going to pick up the yarn from that bigger ball and I'm going to knit the stitch with that, bring my yarn to the front and slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle. Perfect. Now I can just turn my work back around and we can see the yarn from this I-cord edge over here. And because we're doing the next stripe in green as well, we need to catch the float of our blue yarn up into the I-cord so we won't see the float on the back. So to do this, I grab the blue yarn and I'll just place it in the middle position over the top of this big ball of green yarn. And you can see here the green is sitting underneath the blue. Then I'll just take the green yarn and knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord. And if I flip the work back over, you can see how it's starting to trap that blue yarn up into the I-cord. It's just sort of keeping it up and away at the moment so it will be hidden inside the I-cord. Then I'll knit the next stitch with my green. I'll bring the yarn to the front and slip the next 3 stitches onto the needle. Then I'll turn my needle around clockwise and I'm going to take this big ball of green yarn, I'm going to put it in the left hand position and I'll move the other 2 balls around one position to the right. Then I'll take the smaller ball of green yarn and knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord edge on this side. Then I'm going to switch to the big ball of green yarn. So I'm going to take this smaller ball, I'm going to place it over the top of the green ball and off to the left. Then I'll pick up the big green ball's yarn. You can see it's sitting underneath the smaller ball of green yarn here. And then I'm just going to knit with that, 1 stitch. I'll bring the yarn to the front and then slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle. And then I can turn my work back around and we can see those green stripes in the middle there. We've got our blue stripes and we've got our green stripes in between the green I-cord on both sides. And the blue yarn has been trapped up in that I-cord really neatly. And for the next row, I'm actually going to do a blue stripe. So I need to reposition my yarn so that the blue is trapped for the I-cord section, but then I'll start using it for the stripe section. So I'll put the blue over the top of the green yarn. So the green is sitting underneath the blue here. And I'm going to knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord. But now I want to switch to using the blue yarn, but I need to do one more twist before I do this so it connects the I-cord to the body section of the scarf. So I'm just going to take this big ball of green yarn, I'm going to place it over the top of my blue yarn. So the blue is sitting underneath now and I can knit with the blue yarn. And if this is an increase row, you'll want to make your increase just like in the pattern. So here I'm knitting through the front and the back loop of the stitch to make an increase, taking that off the needle, and you'll see I've got 2 stitches of the blue now. So I've made my increase, I can bring my yarn to the front and slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle. Then I'll just turn my work around clockwise to do the next row. And I'll take this blue yarn, put it in the left hand position, and I'll move the other 2 balls around one position to the right. Then I can take the small ball of green yarn and knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord. And again, we want to connect the I-cord to the body of the scarf, so I'll take the small ball of green yarn, place it over to the left so it's crossing over the blue yarn. Then I can pick up the blue yarn, I'll just pull this little green bit out of the way, tighten that down, and then I'll knit over the blue stitches with the blue yarn. Then I'll bring my yarn to the front and slip the 3 stitches onto the needle. I'll turn my work back and it's time to do the next row, which is another blue row. But first I want to knit the first 3 stitches with my green for the I-cord. And then I want to place this green over the top of the blue and put it in the middle. Then I can pick up my blue yarn, knit the next 2 stitches with this, bring the yarn to the front, and then slip the last 3 stitches. Then I'll turn my work, put this blue ball over to the left, move the others around one position to the right. Then I can pick up the small ball of green yarn, knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord with that, and then I'll take this small ball of green yarn, place it over the top of the blue yarn and to the left. Then I can pick up the blue yarn, knit 2 stitches with that, bring the yarn to the front and slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle. And you can see now how those stripes are starting to neatly form in between the I-cord edge. So that's the basic technique for how to do the color changes for making the stripes inside the I-cord. I'm going to go through this exact same process again when the scarf is a little bit longer and a bit wider, just to show you the technique, just to make sure you've extra got it, because it can be a little bit confusing, this one. Alright, so I've done a bunch of my scarf now, and I'm just going to show you how to do the pattern again for the color changes and the twists in the yarn, just so it's clear. So this is my left side of the I-cord with my little ball over here of the green. This is the blue yarn in the middle. I've just finished my 4 rows in blue. And then over to the side here, I've got my big ball of green yarn, which is for the I-cord and for the green stripes in the body of the scarf. So because I'm going to do a green stripe in the next row, I'm just going to take my green yarn, make sure it's not crossing over with the blue yarn at the back. They're both sort of going off to either side. And then I'm going to just start knitting the pattern with my green yarn. The first 3 stitches are the I-cord. And then I'm just going to knit over the blue stitches of the previous row's stripe. I'll knit all the way to the end. And then I'm going to bring this green yarn to the front and slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle. So now that's the odd row done, I'm going to turn my work around. I'm going to take the big ball of green yarn, put it over to the left, and then I'm going to move the other 2 balls one position to the right. Then I can pick up the yarn from my smaller green ball to do this side of the I-cord. I'm just going to knit the first 3 stitches with this smaller ball of yarn. And then I'm going to want to switch back to my larger ball of green yarn for the rest of the green stripe and the I-cord on the other side. So to do this, I want to grab this ball of green yarn, the smaller one, and place it over the top of the larger ball of green yarn, so the bigger ball of green yarn is sitting underneath the smaller ball. Then I'm going to pick up the yarn from the bigger ball of yarn, and I'm going to knit to the end of this row in the green. At the end of this row, I'm going to bring my yarn forward and slip the last 3 stitches onto my needle. Then I'm going to turn my work back counterclockwise, and it's ready to start the next row. And because the next row is a green colour row, we need to deal with the blue of the previous row so that it's catching the float up in our I-cord along the edge, so we won't see the blue strands on the back when we turn our work over. So now we have to twist these yarns, so I'm catching the blue yarn's end up in the I-cord. So I'm going to take this blue yarn here and I'm going to place it over the top of the green and put it in the middle. So now the green yarn is sitting underneath the blue yarn when I cross them over. And now if I pick up the green yarn and I start to knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord with that, it's going to trap the blue yarn up into the I-cord so you won't see it. So I'll knit the first 3 stitches. And then I'm going to keep knitting this row all the way till the end. You can see here, if I turn it over, this blue yarn has been sort of caught up in that I-cord section, so you won't see it. I'm going to go to the end of this row. Now bring my yarn to the front, slip those 3 stitches onto the needle. Then I'm going to turn my work clockwise. I'm going to grab this big ball of green yarn, place it over to the left side, move the others around 1 position to the right. Then I'm going to knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord on this side with this little ball of green yarn that's in the middle. And then I want to get this small ball of green yarn, place it over the top of the other big ball of green yarn, put it on the left, then I'll pick up the big ball of green yarn and knit to the end of the row with that one. Then I'll bring my yarn forward, slip the last 3 stitches onto my needle, and then turn my needle back around counterclockwise. And then I'll be ready to start a blue row because we've already done 4 rows of the green now. But we're going to have to do a few little changes before we do our blue section because of the first section of the blue, we still need to trap it into the I-cord edge. So I'm going to take the blue ball of yarn, put it over the top of the green ball and put it in the middle. Then I'm going to start knitting the first 3 stitches with this green yarn. And now I want to start knitting the next section with my blue yarn. So I'm going to take this green ball, put it over the top of the blue ball. So the blue is now crossing underneath the green. And now I can continue knitting my blue stripe with the blue yarn. And if this is a section where you're doing an increase or a decrease, just do this as you normally would. I'm just going to do a decrease, knitting 2 together. And then I'm just going to continue on knitting the rest of this row in the blue until I get to the last 3 stitches. Then I'm going to bring my yarn in front and slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle. Then I'm going to turn my work around and grab the ball of blue yarn, put it over the top of my other 2 and over to the left. Then I'm going to move the other 2 balls around 1 position to the right. Then I'm going to knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord on this side with the small ball of green yarn. I'll just pick that up, knit the 3 stitches. And then I want to switch back to the blue, but I need to join the blue section to the green section. So I'm going to have to put this green ball of yarn over the top of the blue. So the blue is crossing underneath the green. And then I'll pick up the blue and knit to the end of the blue row with this one. Then I'm going to bring my yarn to the front, slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle and turn my work back around counterclockwise. So now we've done the first 2 rows in the blue, we need to do 2 more rows of that. Before we do that, we're going to do the first 3 stitches in the green. So just pick up the green from the back. You'll see it's not crossing over with the blue at this stage. That is perfect. So now we can just knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord with this green. Then, before I knit the blue stitch, I want to take my ball of green yarn, place it over the top of the blue and put it in the middle. Then I can pick up my blue yarn, which is sitting underneath the green now, and I can start knitting the blue section stripe to the end. Then I'll bring my yarn to the front, slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle, and turn my work around. I'll get this blue ball, put it over to the left position, and then move the others around 1 place to the right. I'll pick up the yarn from the small ball of green in the middle, knit the first 3 stitches of the I-cord, And then I'll take this green yarn, place it over the top of the blue and onto the left position. Then I can pick up my blue and knit to the end of the row. Then I'll yarn forward, slip the last 3 stitches onto the needle, turn my work back around counterclockwise, and that is the end of the blue section. I've done 4 rows in the blue, so now it would be time to move on to another 4 rows of green. And that's the end of the pattern repeat for this scarf. Hopefully it makes sense. So the next 4 rows are going to be in green. You could always go back to the start of this section where I started showing you the pattern on this wider bit of scarf if you want to keep following along. So I'm right near the end of my scarf now and I've got 7 stitches on my needle. I'm at an odd row, so I'm going to make a decrease on this row. To do that, I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches in the green. Then I'm going to slip the next stitch. Then I'll knit the 4th stitch in green because I'm switching to a green row. Then I'm going to pass over that slipped stitch we did before, and that will make our decrease. And to finish the remainder of the scarf, I can use the green, the big ball that I've already been using in this row to finish both sides of the I-cord. So I can bring my yarn forward, slip those last 3 stitches, and then I'll turn my work around. On the off chance you are doing your I-cord where both sides are in different colours, you'll want to keep doing one side of your I-cord with one ball of yarn and one side of the I-cord with the other ball of yarn. But because this is all green at the end, I'm just going to use the one big ball of green yarn. Then I'll just keep knitting as in the pattern. I want to knit as many rows here as I did at the start before I did my increase. That way I'll make sure that both of my ends look perfectly even on this scarf. Then I'll just cast off like it says in the pattern, and any ends I'll need to trim off and then weave them in. With the green I just finished with, I'm going to feed that up through the I-cord, and then I'll go back down the other way and then I can trim that off. With the blue yarn that's a little bit higher up in the scarf, I'm just going to do a little tiny knot over to the side. You won't see it, it just keeps it a little bit more secure and it gives me peace of mind. Then I'm going to weave that end in up through the I-cord and back down the other way. Then I'll do the exact same for the other green ball of yarn we were using on the other side of the I-cord. And then I'll just weave in some other ends from in the middle of the scarf where I had to join on a new yarn. I would always make sure I would join yarn on at the end of a row. That way it's a lot easier to weave it in up through the I-cord and just hide where that join is. And that's the end of this scarf, all done. I really love how it looks with the stripes in the middle of the scarf, but the I-cord being one solid colour. I think it's a super fun design. And that is the end of the tutorial. Hopefully you had fun watching along. Hopefully all my instructions made sense and that you are now on your way to making something super duper fun because I love making these Sophie scarves. I genuinely think the Petite Knit's done a great job with this pattern. I really love it. But yeah, I think it's fun to add a little bit of pizzazz by putting some stripes in every now and then. Thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, just pop them in the comments below and I'll try and get back to you. Otherwise, hope you have a nice time knitting and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.